Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society's latest society meeting. Every night, a thief enters our lives and steals away a vital resource from humans and the natural ecosystem. And that thief is a light bulb, probably one of the single most items that has changed how humans go about our lives. During a cloudless night in 1994, an earthquake shook the city of Los Angeles and caused a citywide blackout. The inhabitants, naturally alarmed, phoned various emergency services and a local observatory. An observatory was contacted because a mysterious cloud had appeared overhead. That mysterious cloud turned out to be the band of the Milky Way, our home galaxy. In a little over 100 years, that light bulb has mostly disconnected humans from the night sky. Now, many millions of people across our planet can never experience the Milky Way from where they live. So here for you tonight to reveal the dark side of light, please welcome Bob Mizon.
Okay, right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm the guy who moans about bad lighting. I've been doing it for the last 31 years, and I think we've seen a little bit of progress in the UK. It's a sad thing that a lot of amateur astronomers don't really get their teeth into light pollution, but I suspect one of the reasons is that they think that it's a lost battle. And I think if people knew a bit more about it and what we can do, they might pitch in. I'm not talking about everybody, obviously. Some of you do tremendous work, but including the late Mike Hellenor, who's a friend of mine. But anyway, let's talk about frequently asked questions on light pollution. And here are the 10 questions I've chosen. I've based these on the messages, the emails, and in the past letters we used to get in huge numbers from people who were having problems with lighting and they didn't quite know how to solve the problems. One of the problems is, of course, that there's no law to protect the night sky, and there's almost no law to protect people from the excesses of bad lighting. So the first question, what is light pollution? The answer might be slightly different from what you think. Second one is, oh, well, it's just a load of astronomers. They're a tiny minority of the population, so what? Number 3, how dare you turn all our lights off? We don't want to live in medieval darkness. Number 4, hang on, if you start dimming lights, turning them off, etc., we're going to be overrun with criminals. Number 5, I've heard that light pollution is about energy as well. And how does that tie in with all this? Number 6, there must be some laws against this nuisance. I mean, there's laws about bad smells and excessive noise and things. So isn't there anything about light? Number 7, a lot of councils have told me this. Well, if you point all the lights directly downwards, the cones of light will be closer together and you won't get uniform lighting on the road, and you'll have to have more lights. Well, let's see. Number 8, these lights are designed by experts, aren't they? These lighting companies, they're quite good at what they do. Number 9, LEDs. Well, they're so versatile. You can dim them, you can do all sorts of things with them. They're tremendously directional. They must be the answer to your prayers. Number 10, well, if this is a big problem, what can I do about it? Here we go. Number 1, what's light pollution? It's light going up. No, it isn't. It's light coming down from the sky. Now, that might be a surprise to some people. So the light goes above the horizontal, as you can see from these warehouse lights in Essex here in the bottom. And it goes up at all sorts of angles, but at low angles, between 0 and 10 degrees above the horizontal, it causes a lot more scattering from particles and dust and pollen in the air. And wherever it's scattering in the sky, it comes back down towards the observer. If you shine a torch into the sky, what you're really seeing is light coming down, isn't it? Because it's all scattered from particles and atmospheres and droplets and things like that. And you see it sort of scattering up there and coming back down towards you. So that's sky glow. That's the astronomer's problem with light pollution. Another problem, which is much more common because more people suffer from it, is stray light entering premises. In America, they call this light trespass. But my good friend Martin Morgan Taylor, sorry, Professor Martin Morgan Taylor, Leicester, he tells me that you can't really say this in English law because trespass is a deliberate attempt to get into somebody's premises or to cross their boundaries. And nearly all lighting is not deliberately aimed at other people. It just happens. Light nuisance, which is what we call it, just happens. The person who's put up a glary so-called security light opposite your house doesn't know that they're causing a problem. It's just ignorance, really, not malice. So it's not really trespass. Certainly it does cause a lot of distress. More than once in the last 30 years, I've had people contact me contemplating suicide and emigration from this country because they were so badly troubled, distressed by other people's badly aimed lighting. And the third topic of light pollution is glare, of course. And this is really a health-related thing because glary light not only stops you from sleeping, but also it causes road accidents. It has killed many people in the past. And so this is the spectrum, if you like, of light pollution: sky glow, light nuisance, and glare. And you might be surprised it isn't light going upwards, it's light coming downwards. Right. So what is all the fuss about this, really? There are tens of thousands of amateur astronomers in this country, not so many professional astronomers because they've all gone off to Hawaii and the Canaries where they can see the sky better. And the argument is really that everyone has the right to see the night sky. People are much more interested in the night sky than you might think. I'll give you two examples. Last year in February 2019, I was at stargazing evening at the University of Surrey. And most of these displays, telescopes and display boards, were in the cathedral, which is right next door, Guildford Cathedral. And there was Jim Al-Khalili there, the fairly well-known person, opening the thing. And only problem was the stargazing evening wasn't going to happen because it was really cold, February. It was throwing it down with rain, horizontal rain, horrific stuff. And the weather was absolutely abominable. I didn't think I would get there in my car. It was, you know, it was zero visibility. How many people turned up? Anyone like to have a guess, if I can hear you? How many people turned up? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you're hearing me.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. I'll pick a number.
Okay.
Let's say 10.
650 people turned up. Second example, again last year in the summer, I was at the South Downs National Park stargazing evening in Midhurst. I think that's in West Sussex, not sure. And again, it was pouring with rain. It was a really foul night. The Hampshire Astronomical Group had set up a little display inside, and the National Park had their own display about lighting and stars and planets and things. 550 people turned up. And these are people who just want their little dose of astronomy. They don't really care if they can't see anything, but people are much more interested, I believe firmly, in astronomy than a lot of us realize. So it is really worth fighting for the night sky, for them as well as for us. Anyone who goes on holiday where they can see a dark sky for the first time in their lives, anyone who comes to meetings we have just here at the Cranbourne Chase area of outstanding natural beauty, these are people who are not astronomers. They're just general members of the public who come out of interest, and they always get absolutely wowed by this experience. They're blown away by it. And so I'm firmly of the opinion that, you know, it's not just astronomers who are affected by light pollution. The fact that 90% of school children in this country can't see anything really from where they live is one of the great environmental tragedies, I think, that's happening at the moment. This is from DEFRA, the Department of the Environment. And I went to a meeting in 2009 about the new light pollution law. This is only about light coming through windows. It's called the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act, Section 102. And DEFRA were explaining this law, which had in fact been passed in 2005, but they wanted to clarify everything. And they said, and I wrote it down at the time, these are actual quotations, it should not be the case that astronomers are exempted from legislation. Anyone who says to you, you're just an astronomer, you've got this fancy hobby. Martin Morgan Taylor, who's a professor of law, says that there's a lovely little phrase in law. It's dainty occupations. A dainty occupation is one that almost nobody does, you know. And it mustn't be considered in law that astronomy is a dainty occupation. The DEFRA representative also said, her name was Helen Matthews, she said they should not be considered as sensitive complainants. So if you complain to your local council about light pollution, say coming from a neighbour's house towards your observatory or your observing site, they can't say, well, you're a sensitive complainant. This is an unusual complaint, because DEFRA have stated quite categorically that you're not a sensitive complainant. Everybody is entitled to pursue their hobbies and pastimes without sort of environmental pollution stopping them from doing it. The third topic is people always believe, nearly always believe, that you want to turn their lights off. A couple of examples. I was on a BBC programme that it's regional, so you may see it in a different form where you are. It's called Inside Out. They're thinking of knocking it on the head, which has caused a bit of a furore in the BBC. And Inside Out is a regional current affairs programme. And some years back, I went to Dover with Inside Out cameras and mics and things, and we were talking about light pollution. That was the point of the programme. And we went up onto the White Cliffs, looked down on Dover docks, and the glare of the lights from the docks right in our eyes caused us to comment, of course, that, you know, why was it there? Why were these people lighting up the whole of the White Cliffs above the docks when what's needed is lighting the dockyard area? Because the dockyard area is full of juggernauts and pedestrians and forklift trucks and things like this. And it really does need a good amount of light for people not to be severely injured. And I wrote to Dover Harbour commissioners and said, look, why do the lights shine upwards? Wouldn't it be better to point them all in the right direction? And the immediate response was, we need these lights for security. They think you want to turn them off. It doesn't matter what you put in your email or formal letter, they think you want to turn their lights off. And so you should word any complaint about lighting or advice about lighting very carefully to say that, look, I don't want to turn your lights off. I just want you to put them where they're needed. And of course, if you do direct them where they're needed, you'll get more light there, won't you? Instead of wasting it somewhere else. And then you talk about shielding, which is, of course, the main remedy for stray light pollution. Good design in the first place. You don't buy rubbish. And unfortunately, B&Q, etc., sell lots of this rubbish for household use. And you talk about sensitivity of the people who need to use this light. If you blind them, they'll get run over by juggernauts. Or if they're a juggernaut driver, they might run you over. And so therefore, you know, this is the thing to always remember, that people think you want to turn their lights off. And you don't. Any astronomer who wants everybody to turn their lights off is mad. Nobody wants medieval darkness. And the cure, of course, is star quality lighting, as we like to call it. You can't tell your neighbour they can't have a light. This is a democracy. People have died for this democracy. You can't go telling people they can't have their lights. Crime. Oh, this is the biggie, isn't it? Crime. I'm not changing my light. This is a high crime area. Little story. You may know that more than half the local authorities in Britain are now turning street lights off at midnight. It tends to slide into 1 o'clock in the morning in summertime, to save energy. It's not normally anything to do with stars. It's to save a lot of money and energy, and it works. Dorset started switching off its street lights about 5-6 years ago now, and they've saved approximately £400,000 a year by doing this. When people hear this, they say, whoa, turning the lights off? We're all going to be mugged, raped, vandalized, graffitied. Hang on, let's look at the facts, okay? My first little example, when this happened in Weymouth in Dorset, just down the road from me, they had an interview on the local radio. And a woman was saying, look, this is a high crime area. Parts of Weymouth do have their problems. You can't turn our lights off. It's a high crime area. And the reporter said, well, hang on. If it's a high crime area when the lights are on, what does that say about the role of lighting? And she simply didn't reply because she was trying to work out how sort of silly her statement had been. If there's a high crime area when all the lights are on, you're not going to suddenly have more crime if the lights are off. The lights must be playing a role in the crime. People need to see what they're doing. Lights don't have preferences. Lights aren't intelligent. We've heard of intelligent lighting, but this is not what I'm talking about. Lights don't have any bias. They will help the good guys and they will help the bad guys. If you talk to people about their house being burgled, etc., there are a couple of points to make. Nearly all break-ins and burglaries take place in broad daylight. The only thing that burglars really care about, and I've seen research where people have interviewed hundreds of burglars in prisons and things like this, the only thing they care about is if the premises are occupied. If there's somebody in, almost no burglar will enter premises. It's just too risky. If there's light, well, who benefits from a light at 2 o'clock in the morning? Is it you fast asleep in bed? You might not even be in. Is it the police officer 10 miles away in a car? Or is it the burglar sorting out his tools under the light? Who benefits? And this is the huge question to ask. Who uses the light? Light doesn't prevent crime. Crime is not a lighting problem. It's a societal problem. And if you want to stop crime, sort out the drugs problem, sort out the poverty problem, sort out all the other problems that make people want to take other people's stuff. And I'll read a bit off the page now. It's a lot easier for passers-by to see malefactors if lighting is subtle. Glare blinds potential witnesses. If you've got a so-called security light, honestly, they don't offer security. If you've got a so-called security light on your premises, for heaven's sake, point it somewhere where the person might be seen. If you point it outwards towards potential witnesses, they won't look. They'll be blinded if they do. And also, you've got to be careful how you sight your light, because deep shadows are, again, some of the criminal's best friend. The big glare is a criminal's friend, and the deep shadow is a criminal's friend. Why not have no lights at all? I've lived here for 38 years in Dorset. I haven't got any exterior lights, never been burgled. 1 or 2 houses in the road have been, but they've got lights. I'm not drawing any conclusions from a single example, but I honestly think that it doesn't matter whether you've got dark premises or lit premises. If somebody wants to get in there, they probably will. It's almost impossible to stop people breaking into premises if they want to. There is a school of thought that says that a torch flashing in the dark is more suspicious than somebody moving about in a lit space. If you're walking along a street at night, you see somebody moving around under a light, it doesn't really trigger any suspicions. I mean, that is quite normal to see this. But if you see somebody flashing a torch about in a garden, you might think, well, hang on, I wonder what's going on there. There's quite an important report in 2015 from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and University College London. And it shows, the conclusions are that local authorities can safely switch off or reduce street lighting at night because crime rates tend to decrease when lights go off. They do. Do an internet search. Search something like light switch-offs, crime increases, or something like that. And just about every web page you find will be about crime decreasing when lights go off. It is just a fact that people need to see what they're doing. I once gave a good lighting award to Newcastle, that's the one up north, Newcastle on Tyne, City Council, because they put in some really well-directed, not too bright streetlights. And we always think in the Commission for Dark Skies, we think that people should be rewarded as well as moaned at about lighting. If they do it well, we've presented hundreds of these awards over the years. Okay. I was talking to the leader of the council, and she said to me, well, we're quite happy with this white light we've got now, LEDs obviously, because people can assess the threat from somebody at a distance. With white light, you can see a bit further, and you can see if somebody is likely to be, you know, are they wearing a striped jersey and a mask, etc. But you know what I mean, that some people look threatening, others don't. And I said to her, well, don't you realize that this means that the villain can assess the vulnerability of a person at a greater distance? You see, it works for both of them. It's not just the victim who's helped by the light, it's the criminal. The criminal can assess that person from a distance. Is it a little old lady with a big handbag, or is it a 7-foot-tall rugby prop forward? I won't attack him, but I might have a go at the old lady. And there you go. Lights have no bias. And she was quite interested in that. The person in the picture is Martin Morgan Taylor, Professor of Law at De Montfort University, Leicester. And he set up this little scene to illustrate the thing about lighting. Okay. The light on the left here, if you can see my cursor, the light on the left shines in your face. It's not quite so easy to see this figure in the door. If that light were much brighter, you probably wouldn't see him at all. But now he's directed the light 90 degrees downwards, and you can see just about everything in that scene. Which is the better light? Obviously the one that shines downwards and not sideways. So if people are talking to you about exterior lighting, just make the point, you know, you've got to light the scene properly instead of dazzling potential witnesses. You might prefer darkness, because if somebody's walking about with a torch, it's much more suspicious. And how about interior lights? I always leave interior lights on, a timer in my house and a radio on when we're out. And I'm not saying it's a tremendous deterrent, but we've never been broken into, so it might be helping. Let's get on to question 5, energy. Now, there's a massive change in lighting going on right now. There's a huge tidal wave of LEDs sweeping the world. I confidently predict that in about 10 years' time, there won't be any kind of light in the world except for LEDs. Why? Because they're fantastic. They're really efficient. They're so versatile. They're tremendously easy to direct wherever you want. You can have them in all sorts of colors. You can dim them. They come on immediately, and unlike the old sodium lights, which took a bit of time to come on, you can switch them off immediately. You can have lighting schemes where some of the lights are on, some of the lights are off. Did you know that all the streetlights in Oslo in Norway are controlled by one person at a keyboard? And if there's a big fight in the town centre, that person will turn all the lights up so the police can see what they're doing, you know, sort them out. And if there's almost no traffic on the ring road, they'll turn off every second light, or sometimes all of them, because cars have headlights. Now, the LED revolution has meant that, you know, we thought that it would be a partial solution to light pollution because these lights are so versatile, they can be dimmed, etc. They can be very easily directed because they're small. Do you remember the old sodium lights above your head back in the 1960s, 70s perhaps? They were about 1 meter long, very difficult to enclose and shield. But LEDs are no problem at all. You just build them into the casing and they shine straight down on the road. Brilliant. But the word brilliant, of course, has two different meanings. And most LED lights, whether they're standing above a road, stuck on a wall, wherever they are, they're too bright. You don't need football floodlights to light a road. You don't need a massively bright, glary light to light up your garden and try, and it won't work, to scare away burglars. It's been estimated that the carbon dioxide produced by domestic floodlights in this country is about the same as that produced by the car usage in a year of 114,000 people. But this figure is rapidly changing because of the amount of energy wasted by LED lights. They're such wonderful things. It's a real tragedy that they're nearly always far too bright for the job. The people who invented the very bright LED light got the Nobel Prize. And I wonder what they think of how they're being used. Chris Baddeley, Dr. Chris Baddeley, one of our CFDS committee members, we've got 13 of them. He's a physicist and he's made a lot of calculations about energy waste. And he reckons that if you didn't throw away the energy that lighting wasted in this country, you could probably close down 2 large power stations. This is a European calculation. I went to a conference in Slovenia in 2007, and they resolved at that conference, the people of Dark Sky Slovenia, to try and work out exactly how many streetlights there are in Europe. Not an easy thing. Try to assess what kind of streetlights they may be, etc. And given the different kinds of streetlights that are sold in various countries, you could try to assess whether or not they shine upwards or not. And they came to a sort of vague conclusion. It's an impossible task. It changes all the time to lighting. But they reckon that it would be safe to say, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking euros or pounds these days, Europe sends about £2 billion worth of energy skywards every year. £2 billion. That's not million, that's 1,000 times more, £2 billion. And that was calculated around 2009-10. And so it may be quite a lot more now, because since then there are vastly more numbers of LEDs, and they're the ones that send far too much light out into the environment, whether it be down or up. Of course, if a light is too bright for the job, it doesn't matter if you shine it downwards, it'll just bounce off the ground and go back up into the sky. What are the laws about lighting? There is a law about lighting, the Clean Neighbourhoods Act 2005, Section 102. This states that intrusive light into premises is a statutory nuisance. It used to be just noise and smells, but now it's light. Unfortunately, most local councils don't really enforce this properly, because it says in the letter of the law that it must be a nuisance affecting the usage of your premises. And this is always interpreted as health. If you can't prove that the lighting is damaging your health, it doesn't matter what your other moan is. I can't see the stars, I can't get to sleep. If you can't prove it damages your health, tough luck. They won't do anything about it. And even more ridiculous, transport premises are excluded from this law. So if you don't like the light coming from your local lorry park, bus station, railway station, hard luck. There's nothing you can do about it. They're not within the law. They can throw as much light as they like anywhere into people's premises, and nobody can do anything about it. We've asked DEFRA and other agencies, why is this? They cannot answer the question. Even they don't know. Now, if I were a cynical person, I might suggest a few champagne lunches going on in 2005 between certain agencies, but then I'm not a cynical person, so I won't suggest that. There are laws about lighting, real laws about lighting and protecting the night sky, not just people's windows. In France, they have a blanket national light pollution law. It's fantastic. Look it up. It's brilliant. Slovenia, Liechtenstein, what? A country the size of a few football fields, they've got a law to protect the night sky. The Czech Republic, in parts, has laws, regional laws, to protect the night sky. So there's no argument against Britain doing it. People can't say, well, nobody else does it. Yes, they do. France is the leader now in environmental protection against light. If you go to, or just ask the internet for French light pollution law, try to find an English translation, there are a few around, and it's very far-reaching. It's to do with the spectrum of the light, the intensity of the light, the direction of the light, when you have to switch it off. If you're a football stadium, for example, you have to switch the lights off immediately. Everybody's gone, can't leave them on, trying to grow your grass or anything like that. Here's a transport premises in Norfolk. They're allowed to do that. That's permitted, no problem. Or is it? Let's have a little break. It's quiz time. If you don't get this right, well, I'll be well surprised. Okay, quiz time. Spot the odd one out. What have we got here? We've got a lovely flower meadow in Dorset. We got a nice sandy beach somewhere down in Devon. There's a roadside verge. So I think that was taken in Yorkshire, I'm not sure. This is a field of sunflowers. I've got a nasty feeling that was taken in France, but it doesn't alter the argument. Okay, you have Orion over Dorset. I took that photo, Orion over Dorset. And you have the New Forest. There is a bit of forest in the New Forest. Most of it is heathland, but so we've got 6 different types of environments, 6 different landscapes, skyscapes, if you like. Which is the odd one out? And if you haven't guessed already, well, I'll go on. Okay. Flowery meadow. If you fly tip here, you can be fined £50,000. Yes, £50,000, and you can be imprisoned if you keep doing it for 5 years. On the beach and in the sea in front of it, if you ruin the beach by oil spillage, dumping fuel or cargo into the sea, you can be fined millions of pounds. It's unlimited. You can go to prison. You can have your vessel confiscated. Litter on verges by the road, £2,500 fine in roads and streets in the UK. That's the maximum for littering. Big fines for damaging crops. Some people do and some people don't approve of genetically modified crops, but a person who recently trashed a field of wheat or something was fined £4,300. So the law covers crops, whether or not they be modified. In any national park in the country, again, you can be fined £50,000 for dumping, and you can go to prison for 5 years if it's a really severe series of cases. And the odd one out, of course, is the night sky. You can do this. This is a car park in Kent, I think. You can do this to the night sky. Here's a distant town, and nobody can do anything about it. It's an amazing fact that the night sky, the sky itself, is half of our environment. It stretches 180 degrees from horizon to horizon, and you can spoil it at will. There is no penalty. In France, yes, there is. So we just look forward to the day, if we all keep making a noise about it, when this will be a fact. So there you go. Number 7. Surely if lights like this are directed downwards, the problem is solved. And some people say, well, hang on, you don't get as much light then because it's all narrowed down in a cone. The lights have got to spread out. Well, no, it's not true, actually. It's what happens inside that area there, if you can see my cursor, that matters. If that is correctly designed, the light will go sideways, downwards, for quite a distance. You don't need huge numbers of lights like this to light a road. This road has 3 times as many lights as is needed. Column height and the optics are what makes the light go where it goes. And of course, if you've got some old glary type of light that isn't shielded properly, unlike this one, it'll go straight upwards. But if the light is too bright, a lot of it will bounce off the pavement and go upwards as well. Here's an argument you might hear. My lights are designed by experts. B&Q say they're the best ones on the market. They cost me a lot of money. Go away. Well, the Titanic was designed by experts. It sank. Swan and Edison independently, Swan in the UK, Edison in America, they independently produced the first bright filament electric lamps in the 1840s. And they sensibly joined forces to become the Swan Edison lighting company. But the number of improvements that have been made to lighting are huge. It's changed almost every year. Trouble is, most of those improvements aren't really improvements in environmental effect. They're improvements in efficiency within the light, how much light goes down onto the road, etc. But directionality has always been the poor relation. It's never been the case that you have to direct a light where it really is needed. You'd think it would be logical in the minds of lighting professionals that this has to be done. But nowadays, of course, most of the lighting you see in private scenarios in this country comes from the Far East. And the standards there just don't exist at all. The majority of modern exterior lamps send their emissions where they're not needed or wanted. And you can see plenty of examples here. We talked about LEDs. You can really do great things with LEDs. This is an LED. The units are sealed inside this little casing here. This light shines only downwards. It does spread a little bit. This is a small car park in front of a petrol station. And the lights can be dimmed. You can even put gel on that light to change it to amber. But you can get amber LEDs without necessarily having filters and gels on them. So they don't have to be bright. They don't have to be white. They don't have to be shining in various directions. An LED is a wonderful tool for lighting correctly. It's a massive shame that most people who buy and install lights don't know this. They just don't know how great LEDs can be. This is a typical blue-rich LED. The spectrum, the color temperature, most of us I think will know what that means. The color temperature of the light is nearly always far too high in this country. We've got a spectrum of color temperatures ranging from about 2000 to about 5500 Kelvin. And with your knowledge of science, you'll know that if you have a very high Kelvin value, then you're going to get a lot of blue light there. As you sink to the other end of the spectrum, 2700, say, which is a fairly common color temperature, then there'll be almost no blue light at all. Now, what do we know about blue light? Well, I remember my physics teacher all those years ago saying, blue bends best, BBB. Remember this? Blue bends best. That's why the sky's blue, because blue light bounces around quite a lot because it's a fairly high energy stuff. And unfortunately, nearly all the road lights that you're seeing on major roads, even small roads in your area, will probably be blue rich. Why? Nobody really knows. That seems to be what the market offers. In France, you can't have blue-rich road lights. This is the kind of thing that could be the saving of the night sky if people can be convinced, I hope by legislation, because there seems to be no other way, that you can't have that kind of spectrum in a light. It's pointless. You can see just as well with lower color temperatures. And unfortunately, this horror, this is actually on a hospital wall. I took this photo. I go to Bournemouth, well, I don't now because of lockdown, but I used to go to Bournemouth Hospital quite regularly for checkups because I had a renal transplant some years back. And this is what they put on the side of the renal unit. And it shines straight down the road into the eyes of approaching drivers at night and dazzles those poor patients who creep outside for a quick cig. And, you know, if they walk into the road, nobody can see them. And I said to the hospital authorities, why don't you point this thing downwards? Look, it's got a bracket on the back. Where do you want this light? Well, it's to light up the pathway. Well, why are you pointing it down the road then? Why are you dazzling drivers? Why are you endangering pedestrians? Why is it so bright? Why can't you choose something a bit better? Oh, they said, blah, blah, blah. But it's not been changed. They don't care. Shines into the wards too. And the last thing you want if you're seriously ill is to be kept awake by light coming through the window. I think there's a little bit of hope in the rise of astrotourism. Huge numbers of people are going to the countryside to see the night sky. All these AONBs and national parks that have become international dark sky parks and reserves. You know the system. It's run by the International Dark Sky Association in Tucson, Arizona, USA. And all over Britain, in fact, Britain has more of these than any other country in the world apart from the USA. All over Britain, there are these dark sky areas where the staff work hard to keep the skies clean, sort out any lighting that might be in the area. They're usually fairly sort of rural places, aren't they? You might have heard of the one up in Northumberland, the Kielder Forest Observatory. They have thousands of visitors every year who just come there to see the stars. It's one of the darkest places in Europe. Down here, we have the Cranbourne Chase area of outstanding natural beauty. Every time they declare, not nowadays with the COVID, of course, but every time they declare a public stargazing meeting, people turn up in enormous numbers. The Wessex Astronomical Society, to which I belong, tries to help out with a few telescopes, and we're usually just overwhelmed by the interest. So astrotourism is definitely on the rise, and I'm hoping that this will get people talking about it. They'll get people talking to their councils, in fact, saying, look, you know, I saw this in the national park. Why can't we have something like this in the town? The Cunard astronomy cruise, of course, I'm not quite sure why this person has a telescope on the deck of a ship. It must have very good stabilizers, that's all I can say. And if the Andromeda Galaxy really does look like that in Wales, well, I think I'd get seriously worried myself. It's supposed to be coming towards us, isn't it? So what are the Commission for Dark Skies priorities? Well, we must try, I think, to get lighting into the planning regime. Lighting doesn't come into planning as long as it doesn't materially affect the look of a building in the daytime. That's all that matters. The way it performs at nighttime, nobody cares. We must try to get rid of the exclusions in the Clean Neighbourhoods Act. Why should a railway station dazzle you and ruin your health and spoil the night sky without fear of penalty? It's crazy. And lastly, we've got to try and get the precautionary principle into lighting discussion. The precautionary principle, you've heard of it, it states quite simply, if there might be a risk with something, don't do it until you can prove that there isn't. And that's exactly what's happening with lighting. It's causing enormous amounts of damage to biodiversity, to people's health, to the night sky, energy, money, and yet it's just allowed to go on. I'm going to read this All this progress means that we've reached a new threshold in countering light pollution. So many people now know and care. So many media outlets report on it. Seen any light pollution in the newspaper recently? I have. So many lighting professionals are on board because they're not our enemies. Most lighting professionals care very deeply about this. In the coming years, as energy prices continue to bite, you don't think they're going down, do you? And environmental concerns permeate the thinking of legislators. Will we see a return to sane lighting practices that offer a well-lit nighttime scene while preserving the ancient view of the stars above? I think we should all, not just a few amateur astronomers who sort of join light pollution movements and things like this, all amateur astronomers should be making a noise about light pollution. Talk to people, talk to the family, talk to your friends, to MPs, and make sure everybody knows about this. Which brings us to question 10. Well, I hope you're doing this already. Use sensible lighting yourself and keep it within your boundaries. If you shine lights outside your boundaries, you're probably wasting energy and money. Tell people with glary lights that it can be much better done. You know, you don't have to be negative about it. Just say, I think I could help you save a bit of money or energy here and possibly not annoy the neighbours. We've got these good lighting awards. You could have one too. I mean, you know, as a society, you could have your own good lighting scheme and you could give awards, make publicity about good lighting examples. The media, they always want to fill those column inches and they love environmental stories. And you've got both there. You've got, you know, an environmental story and a little bit of human interest as well, if you talk about lighting and the problems it causes. Look at our site. If it's not on the last slide, I'll tell you what it is. And you can get loads of info and advice. We have a 40-page light pollution booklet, which you can order from us. It's not free, I'm afraid, because it's 40 pages, but consult me about that if you're interested. Here it is, Blinded by the Light. The pen is just for scale. Okay. This marvelous book by one of our greatest authors called, what's his name? Bob Mizon, that's right. You can even buy that if you're feeling rich. It's on Amazon, or if you prefer people who pay their taxes, there are other websites you can use as well to order it. Okay. There are other things you can do. You can, as Mike did, you could join the CFDS as one of our officers. You don't have to walk up and down with banners. You just have to keep an eye on the local situation and try to do something about it. Subscribe to our newsletter via the BAA. You can give us money. Yeah. You can give astronomy talks. Some of us are natural speakers, some of us aren't, but if you're talking to children, scouts, brownies, anyone, just crowbar the old light pollution in when you're talking about the stars and ask them why they can't see all that many from where they live. And if you're talking generally about lighting with people, talk about the energy and money wasted. Most people are not astronomers. They may be interested in the night sky, but they don't go out with telescopes. And so tell them about the energy and the money and bring in the stars at the end. These are our smart roll-up banners designed by Dan Nixon in Essex, one of our followers. And I think they're quite nice. Just have a little look at them. Poor blackbird here doesn't get any sleep at all, which is not good for any living creature, let alone blackbirds. And the future is either this or this. If we make enough noise, it may help to convince the government that we need a good lighting law. And the really good news is that for the last month now, there's been an all-party parliamentary group of MPs, 22 of them, I think. The co-chair of this parliamentary group is Lord Rees, the Astronomer Royal. And the other co-chair is Andrew Griffith, the MP for Andover and the South Downs, which is a national park and a dark sky area, of course. And these MPs have taken it upon themselves to get the light pollution topic aired much more frequently in the Commons and the House of Lords too, if necessary. They're on our side. We've got a little group of MPs, our little moles in Parliament, working away there. So we have some hopes for that too. Here's a quote. "The light from distant stars and galaxies takes hundreds, thousands, even millions of years to reach us. What a tragedy to lose it in the last millisecond of its journey." And if you're interested, that's the aurora from my back garden. I live 7 miles from the south coast in Dorset in 1989. It was a hell of an aurora, that one. You might remember it, some of you. Okay, so what are people missing? All that sort of thing. Thank you. And our website is britastro.org/dark skies with a hyphen. britastro.org/dark skies, or just search Commission for Dark Skies and you'll find us. Thank you very much for listening to me. I can't see you, but I will stop the screen now. And if you've got any questions, well, I'll leave it to your chairperson there to sort out questions and answers. Okay.